Hello there and welcome to the Reykjavik Rap. It's a pictorial record of our wee visit to Reykjavik and most of Iceland in January 2013.
Well, it wasn't most of. It's actually just a tiny wee corner of Iceland. You need to have been there longer to kind of get that it's absolutely enormous. I went over to East Iceland once. The flight took something like 1.5 hours to get to the other side. Anyway, we did quite a lot of touring around the Reykjavik area. That's true.
And at the moment you leave Scotland, getting on the plane, you're somewhere else, don't you?
It's brilliant because the second you get, apart from this thing that just continually bugs me that, as soon as you're on a foreign carrier, they don't do this thing of triple checking things like your ticket stub because they trust their colleagues to have done the job. You get onto the plane and they've got Icelandic slogans everywhere on the backs of the seats. Like they tell you how to say hello and good night and things like that. And they have a beautiful little poem on one of the cushions in the front. The Icelanders are tremendous at managing to capture ideas with brilliant slogans, because when you arrive at the airport, all the old adverts, which were pretty good for the failed, disgraced banks, have now been replaced with these fabulous ones like a wave. Something like a wave is, there is never a single wave, or something like that, which is a Icelandic saying, as soon as you recover from one disaster, you get another. And of course, that's precisely what happened to them. As soon as they got hit by the financial crisis, the unpronounceable volcano went off. And they've got another one about you're naked if you haven't a brother on your back, which is, again, if you're not supporting somebody, this is the importance of society, then you're vulnerable. You need to be in close contact with people. And these are all the kind of images, along with something like, you must respect nature, but she may not respect you back. Fabulous advert for a fleece company, You realise you're in a different world, really, the second you get on a plane. And actually, that's that doesn't happen all that often.
And when we actually got there, it was go, go, go all the time.
It was unbelievable.
Courtesy of a lovely base, actually, in Reykjavik, lovely hotel, in snow some of the time from Icelandair. Yeah. It was fantastic.
It's a Hilton now, but it used to be, it's part of the Icelandair chain. And it's an interesting company, Icelandair, because they own the planes, they own the bus tours and the hotels. And actually the whole, in a way, Iceland straddles the tectonic plates of America and Europe. And in behavioural terms, this is true as well, because it's very much a kind of coaches turn up to the hotel to take you to things. And there's an expectation that you don't use the bus, more of which later. You can walk around, that's absolutely true. But the Icelanders themselves are not very great walker-arounders. So the hotel itself was just, it is absolutely fabulous because it's all adjusted to being absolutely warm inside, cosy. It's all sort of beautifully lit. And with these fabulous views across the loch, out up to the Arctic, really, because Reykjavik is sitting on a kind of peninsula. So you see across the entire city at night from these beautiful windows, sitting all warm and snug inside. Just a beautiful hotel.
But we went straight away, almost the moment we hit the ground, we were out on what's called the Golden Circle tour. First stop, hydroponics and geothermal.
Yeah, it's in this, there's a belt, which is the active tectonic plate, where Iceland is growing by 0.5 centimetre a year or something. And this is, it'd be more interesting for you to talk about some of this, because I've seen this now 3 times and it never fails to it just puts all the hairs up the back of my neck to be at a place where the earth is doing something uncontrollable like this. And people are having to just try and live with the unpredictability of the whole thing and try to harness what they can. That's what's so impressive about them, that far from running screaming, oh my God, there could be a hot spring that moves tomorrow, they think, yeah, we could actually use that to put a geothermal baths on top of it, or we could bake bread in the earth beside it. So the Golden Circle tour and the hydroponics, very clever. These guys are using geothermal heat to power an awful lot of sunshine, artificial sunshine. What am I trying to say here? Electrical
grow lights, and they use hydroponics to pump water around. They also use the geothermal springs, some of the CO2 from that, to enrich the atmosphere on which they grow the tomatoes. And
They brought bees in to try and kind of counteract the problems they have, so they try not to use any artificial fertilizers.
They use the bees to pollinate the tomato.
Oh no,
plants.
there's other flies that they have in there to kill the other flies.
Yeah, it's like an ecosystem.
And the other thing is they show you in a graph that the domestic consumption of basically, since it's become too expensive anyway from Icelanders to be able to buy things from abroad, again, this is an opportunity for actually stoking up demand for homemade products. And these guys just move straight in. I think 80% of all the tomatoes in Iceland are now produced by Iceland. Oh, that's smart. A fabulous place, an inspiring place to visit in the semi-dark of the morning, which it still was by 10:30 by the time we got there.
But then we actually went out to see one of the natural beauties, which is this the lovely falls, which
Gullfoss,
which are fantastic. I mean, we've seen them icy and in full spate, and there was something between that on this particular day.
Yeah, and it's another of these great stories because there was an attempt to. Actually, now that I see this from my Norwegian PhD, it's the same thing. Mostly these countries had no capital, and English people generally did. So for a long time, it looks to me that both Iceland and Norwegian rivers were bought up quickly by English investors and then unceremoniously ousted from Norway and Iceland to a degree. But this river was going to be bought up, and a young woman there, the farmer's daughter, campaigned to stop it happening and was successful. And it's pointed out by our guide there that it's actually drawing in more money now by the tourists that go up to Gullfoss as part of the Golden Circle tour than it would have done even by supplying hydro energy. That's not to say they haven't blocked up a lot of other rivers with some controversy, the latest one being the one that supplies Alcoa, I think, only with electricity. So, every time you praise the Icelanders, you're totally conscious that they're fly. There's another side of things where the exact opposite's been done. And we got this too from our guide. Recent DNA analysis shows that actually the Icelanders are probably Irish. As in, the guys who came initially were Nordic settlers from Norway, actually, and possibly people too awkward to be held within the very trust-based organised society of the Vikings, strangely. So expelled from Norway, they went to Iceland via the Western Isles, where they picked up female slaves, and Ireland. So the matrilineal DNA is mostly female and the male side is mostly Norse. But now when you look at the overall picture, you have got a bunch of people who are probably largely Celtic. And of course, this is where all the very sensible Norse think they fell down. That's why they were white boys. That's why they chanced too much, So,
and moving on to talk about, obviously, diamond geysers. Sorry, there's a bad pun there.
Wah.
We had to go and see the geysers on the
way back. This is all on this same tour. I mean, really, sometimes you do resent, or I don't know, it makes you feel a little bit like you're prematurely old before your time to be sitting in a kind of organised tour if you've been quite independent minded. But just take this one because, it's all there. The geysers, well, again, I've seen them before, but it is amazing. And the thing that I love about it is there's no entry charge. This natural feature is just sitting there. There's no big, there's modest little kind of chains to suggest this ain't a good idea to go much further. But there's no kind of massive, great keep out type stuff, even though the geyser temperatures would boil your hand off.
And there's some good interpretations which are going on as well in the centre, so that you can actually see some of the history, some of the geology behind it all, and the geography, and it's well worth a visit to it. And as we continued on our journey around this Golden Circle, we ended up at a place called Fontana, which was a kind of health spa built on top of a big hot spring.
Yeah, but by local people. It's always nice to know that. Again, it sounds to me like that happened after the crash. So people had noticed. The Blue Lagoon that's more famous is off in the other direction towards Keflavik, where the airport is. And there's nothing else really. Well, I've been out there and loved that very, very forlorn lava plain peninsula. But since most people are going in the other direction on the Golden Circle, it was a good idea to put a spa there. And the only problem they have is that somebody has stepped in and said you can't let people walk into the loch beside it, from which the geothermal springs come, because I imagine there are effectively open bits that are extremely hot, and if you stood in it, I imagine you'd do some damage to your foot. But they're going to get that resolved, I think, somehow this year. And if they manage to sort that, this will be amazing, because they've got steam rooms that are sitting over the springs. They're very old-fashioned. You have to just open the door when it gets too hot. There's thermometers outside that show you whether it's absolutely impossibly boiling or not, and you choose your cabin accordingly. And then there's wee pools outside with these beautiful views across the loch, and actually to the 3 volcanoes of Iceland. It was a bit cloudy, misty the day we were there, but on a great day, that must just be something else. And of course, that's where we also saw the bread being baked in the earth, the lava bread, which is very common to be served with. Just utterly astonishing. You can put this canister in this unlikely looking mud, and 24 hours later, hey presto, you've got beautiful rye bread.
So coming back to Reykjavik itself, I mean, we had a wander around Reykjavik, guided around Reykjavik, and all I can say is museums, art galleries, what a little treasure Reykjavik actually is.
That was a brilliant tour that you might not think of taking. It's called A Sense of Reykjavik, but it's a walking tour mostly, although we went way out to a peninsula that I've never been to that lets you look back. We began to realise how closely Reykjavik is connected to the neighbouring town, and then we came back and walked through a sculpture park, an old prison, an existing prison that just doesn't even, it's just in the middle of houses. There's no protection around it. Present Prime Minister's residence, which was once again the jail, and has no, again, you wouldn't guess that she could possibly be using it because there's no security whatsoever around it. And then we went to this fish restaurant, which was memorable because, well, you tell the skate story.
Well, it's just there's a dish that they actually eat, which is the rotten skate, and it's just before Christmas, the men all eat the rotten skate, as we are told, and it's a sort of sign of how macho you are, how rotten the skate actually is. But it was something to go and see. I've got to admit. Although
they say, I mean, the interesting background to that was that the skate, because it hasn't got, is it kidneys or what?
Yeah, it doesn't have kidneys, so it doesn't. Basically, it loses all of its
toxins and yuck and stuff right across the flesh of its body. So basically when it's killed, it starts to smell immediately like shark. When the fishermen couldn't sell it in the old days, they just left it on the quayside, and the poor people used to take it because they'd take anything. So actually this is an act of solidarity as much as machismo with the old days of being basically, I mean, a lot of Highland folk I think would identify with this completely, that you just took anything you could get your hands on, and they're still eating that kind of thing now. By gum, even though we weren't eating that stuff, we were upstairs having in the Sea Baron restaurant, which is beside the new harbour. We were upstairs having brilliant lobster bisque, which really is fantastic. But even though we weren't eating this skate, there were some people downstairs eating it. The smell of it stayed on our clothes for about 2 days, didn't it? It was quite something.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the other memorable things of Reykjavik were going to see manuscripts in the culture house and seeing some of the stuff that's there in terms of the relics of the cultural history, but it's also seeing the new cultural history that they're building for themselves in the shape of Harpa.
The culture house is a great place to visit, really very near the centre, beside Harpa. And if you go into the most blackened room, the one that kind of, when I say blackened, I mean there's a hush, there's floodlights, there's specialness about it, and this is where you'd expect to see the crown jewels type demonstration. And the display is actually of the original saga manuscripts, which were written a couple of hundred years after the original settlement in the 800s, which describe pretty well everything, including a great film that explains how the Icelanders were the first to actually land in America. Beside that, then there's Harpa, which this is amazing because it was started to be built when I was last there in 2008. That was the time of the crash. When I left that position, location, right beside the sea, there was just, I mean, it looked like a bomb had gone off, because there was uprights of Harpa, 2 big uprights and foundations, and across the other side of that road that goes beside the coast, there were the frameworks of flats and other buildings and hotels. All of them looked like they would remain like that for the rest of time. And actually, apparently, there was a debate to just leave the Harpa foundations like that as an enduring monument to the stupidity of the Icelanders in letting this small bunch of banksters, as they call them, wreck their economy. But actually, in about 2009, the government and the council decided to keep building. The design, as we heard from the director, Haldor Gudmundsson, is actually from the crazy days, as he put it. So it's over the top, to put it mildly. It's like glass basalt columns, if you can imagine that. Possibly 100, well, my heights are bad, what did you say, 50 metres high maybe? Across that glass facade, they also at night flash moving light, which looks like the Northern Lights, and you can see it from everywhere. You could see it from our hotel, which is not near it. The interior is also absolutely fabulous, and not in that kind of awe-inspiring I'm not worthy to be here kind of way, but just a sort of, good grief, is this what you can do with a building? And finally, when you get into the interior, into the auditorium, we were watching a Strauss performance. It's red, and you think, God, these guys have got such brass neck. Can you imagine the courage it takes as a designer to lead people all the way through this and then take the risk that somebody's not going to be offended by being in a red auditorium? And it works. So they've had full houses since they opened, and that should once again, you describe the economy as the bumblebee economy. No one knows how it flies. This auditorium may be somewhat similar in that it's, I think, a 1,200 seater in a bunch of people in a population of 320,000.
The other cultural artefacts of Reykjavik has to be the outdoor pools. It's a whole culture to itself, isn't it? From the shoes outside through to the snow on the ground, and these are public baths, don't cost much, well worth seeking out. There's lots of them about. But
be warned, you have to shower in the nude. And the thing is, this to me, this says volumes about the trust base of all Nordic societies. They trust you to do this, and they tell you within the pool at Laugar, I can't pronounce it very well, it's the biggest complex anyway, that there is no chlorine. Because everybody abides by this. They leave their shoes outside, sensible, so they don't carry muck in. Then everybody walks in the scud into showers. They give you really nice soapy type stuffy to wash yourself with thoroughly in all the bits that could be sweaty. You then put your swimming corset on, take the towel with you and stick it in racks that are beside the showers. You go in, it's pretty bizarre at the beginning because when you set off to do a length in the pool, you can't actually see if someone's coming in the opposite direction because there's so much steam off the water because it's so hot. And then there's lots of hot pots, and this is where the Icelanders love to sit and talk. And they're all different temperatures, so it is very much, like the chicken korma, madras and vindaloo as to which temperature you can tolerate. But you can see how people can easily spend hours there. And in fact, the hotel that we're in, the Nordica, has a lovely spa where you get shoulder massage. And after we'd done that and gone outside to their outdoor hot tub and sauna, and then come back in again, we were floating around in a swimming pool, and actually with support, float things. And actually both of us fell asleep. I have never fallen asleep in a swimming pool. We were that relaxed.
The last thing I would actually say about the whole visit to Reykjavik, the thing that I didn't expect to see was the museums and art galleries and just all of their glory. Just so much to see, and so much of the fantastic art that we saw.
And what was the name of that? I keep forgetting it. The artist that started with a K. I'm going to kick myself if I can't remember this. Can you remember? The last art gallery we found? Because you'd need to go some to find it. It's just up the back. Okay, an artist beginning with K, who is a idiosyncratic artist, fantastic work. But you get a ticket to one of the galleries in the main Reykjavik Art Museum, not to be confused with the art gallery, which is beside the pond. If you go to the art museum, you get a ticket then to 3 museums, which is worth doing. And my big other tip is buy a bus day ticket. Get into using the buses, because otherwise you become very dependent on the organised tours and you don't explore these places and discover that they're really not that far away. A bus ticket suddenly means you think, whoa, I can leap from bus to bus to bus, and then it becomes fun.
The free newspapers that are lying around the place are worth picking up.
Yeah, pick them up. Reykjavik Grapevine is a terrific one. All the stuff in the airport, pick it up. It's beautiful. Apart from anything else, bring it home and give it to your mums because they've got lovely articles there that will sum up the whole visit for you, probably better than any pictures you'll take.
And that was our visit to Reykjavik.